everybody, it's Rob. It's time for another member talk, and as you can see, we're getting bored with Zoom, so we're experimenting with the virtual backgrounds, testing things out, trying things. Today we're going to bring you a member talk. He's not a member, but he was part of our district meetings, which are currently going on right now. He's been joining us every night. His name is Justin Crowe, and he's from Parting Stone. Parting Stone is a company that produces solidified remains. And so if you haven't had the opportunity to come and join us at our district meetings, we thought we would bring him to you through member talk, and you can watch him here. Solidified remains look like this. This is solidified remains, right? Well, hold on. Oh, green screen. I gotcha. Look at, they disappear and they come back. How fun. These are solidified remains. Justin's going to talk more about that here in just a few moments, but we wanted to welcome you. Thank you for joining us. And again, as always, like us, subscribe, come join us, be a part of this, join the conversation. Thank you, everybody. Talk to you. At this time, I want to turn us over to Justin. He's with a new company that's just come out. I guess they haven't just come out. They've been out for a little while, but they're called Parting Stone. So Justin, are you on here still?
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can.
Great. Cool. Thank you so much, Rob, for inviting me to present at these meetings. And thanks everyone for attending. I know that you are all super, super busy, so I appreciate that. So my name's Justin Crowe. I'm CEO and founder of Parting Stone. We developed the technology to offer families a solid form of remains. So instead of receiving ash following cremation, they can receive a bunch of solids, which kind of resemble stones. I'm about 5 years in the industry now. I was managing editor of Connecting Directors for 2 years and doing product development this for about another 3. And we just launched in October 2019. So I'm going to talk for about 15 or 20 minutes about the technology that we developed, the adoption that we've seen, and the success we've seen so far, and kind of just about our story. And so I'm going to share my screen with you and show you a little presentation. Can you see that, Rob?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I come from a background in product design originally, and the death care space is not where I thought my life was going to go. But I absolutely love it here. It's incredibly rewarding. It is fast-paced. It's also like really weird, and I love funeral conferences. They're one of my new favorite places. And the first time I got looking into the death care industry is when my grandfather died about 4 years ago. And when he died, I started to talk to people around me about how they were experiencing loss. And I kept hearing the same story over and over. And they would talk passionately about their loved one and then tell me they were keeping them in a closet, a basement, or a garage. And I, at the time, was like, this set off some product design red flags. I'm like, this is really bizarre. These people who are close to me are keeping one of their most treasured possessions in a hidden away in their homes. And I talked to one woman who told me that she was keeping the cremated remains of her husband in the trunk of her car for the last 10 years because she didn't want to confront that material or that experience again. And so I started, this seemed odd and weird. And so I started to look into the industry at what solutions were out there for living with cremated remains. And I found some keepsakes that are really common to all of you in the industry. I found ashes into glass products, which kind of beautify the ashes. I found the capsule jewelry, which kind of, allow you to keep those loved ones close while also kind of protecting you from those ashes. And I finally found these highly specialized services like ashes into diamonds. And what I also realized, though, was these were all very successful at allowing you to feel close with those remains, but they were all just Band-Aids for this much larger problem, which I had identified. And that problem was that you send your teaspoon and you get your glass or your jewelry, but you still had 10 cups of ashes left over. They were still ending up in closets. People still didn't know what to do with them. And what I found was people really wanted to feel close with the remains of their loved ones, but they couldn't. And it was all because of this kind of unfortunate form that remains were returned in. And I came up with this kind of crazy idea at the time, which was, could we invent a new form of human remains? Could we figure out a form of remains that was allowed people to touch and hold and feel close with, something that people didn't need to worry about spilling or touching, something they weren't embarrassed about when people came over to their house. And I got a grant to work with Los Alamos National Laboratory here we're in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Really fortunate we received this grant. We worked with some of the top scientists in the world. We were paired with Chris Chen. He typically works on nuclear submarines and nuclear missiles, and he took 6 months of his life to help us develop a new form of human remains. And so we did hundreds of tests. These were some of our first tests trying to solidify human remains, obviously not very successful. And after about 6 months, we ended up with a form of remains that looks like this. And this is called solidified remains. We don't offer a product. We are a service company. We offer a solidification service. This is really just cremation remains in a solid form instead of a granular form. We add very little and we lose very little during our process. And so if somebody sends us 8 cups of cremated remains, they'll receive 8 cups of solidified remains back. And to give you an idea, a 100-pound person results in about 25 of these solids, which look very much like stones. What we also realized at that time was this is the first ever alternative to cremated remains and really a new form. And so we decided to name that form solidified remains, which we define as the full amount of remains in a solid and clean form. And we looked at the history of cremation and realized this wasn't the first time that remains had changed shape. And you can see between 1876 and 1969, the cremation rate was very low in the United States, and we were just returning bone fragments. And as the cremation rate rose, I think people realized that we were scattering pieces of human bone around, and we decided to shift that into what we now know as ash. So the cremulator was invented, and by 1980, almost every state, it was a law to return processed cremated remains instead of the full fragments. And what we're looking at and hoping for now is this is another major shift in the industry where there's now 20 million people in the United States living with ashes and they don't know what to do with them. And we're looking at another shift where we're hoping between now and the future is the preferred form of receiving remains is going to be solidified remains. That's the dream for the company. And so we had developed this technology, but we hadn't actually proven that anyone wanted an alternative to ashes. This was all kind of still this idea. And so I was now going around to all these conferences with my sciencey looking disc saying, we solidified human remains. And all the funeral directors were like, who is this guy? Like, why is he here? But I met this man named Don Fritz, Director of Operations at Cremation Society of Illinois. I gave him the pitch. And he said, I believe my families want an alternative. I'm tired of ashes ending up in closets, and I want to help you prove it. And so his families were the first to be offered an alternative to ashes following cremation. And I don't know if any of you have met Don, but if you know Don, you'll know that a few years ago, he had to have one of his legs amputated. And when he did that, he cremated the leg. He sent the leg to our lab here in Santa Fe, and we solidified those remains. And you can see what his stones look like in the screen there. And he's the first person in history to see his own solidified remains, which I think is pretty cool. And he actually donated those 3 for what I call our museum. And so with Don, we started to get orders for the first time. And we realized that this, with the right education, could possibly change our culture and change how we prefer to receive remains following cremation. We launched in October 2019. We brought in a great management team. We now have 4 people on our production team. That's about to go up to 6 here in 2 weeks. We have an amazing board of advisors, including Larry Stewart and Ryan Dogmartin. So we started to get orders and we moved very quickly in the industry. It's been kind of a wild ride over the last few months. We received the KIPP Award from ICCFA for innovation in the industry, which we're so excited about. We had a beautiful article in American Cemetery and Cremation magazine. We had a beautiful spread in ICCFA magazine. And then just last month, we won a Fast Company magazine award, World Changing Ideas Award for solidified remains. And this was so important because it really put this idea in front of the public that when you choose cremation, you do not have to get cremated remains back. There is another form. So over the last 7 months, we've onboarded 280 locations. It's been crazy. I'm giving these types of presentations 5 to 10 times a week right now. And yeah, so we now have 280 partners on board, some really amazing people, including Real Chapel in Washington, who came on maybe 3 or 4 months ago. And I think they've had a few sales, 3 or 4 sales so far, which is great. And we have an internal leaderboard, and you can see this is our leaderboard that we look at internally. So I blocked out the names of these partners, but what we're seeing is the solidification rates for our top partners are between like 3 and 10%. I think one person this month, last month, even did 16% of their families chose solidified remains over cremated remains. And so, as all of you know, let's see how I'm doing. I'm doing on time. As all of you know, it's so, we're all in a fast-paced industry, but it's so important to take a step back and really understand the impact we're having on families on an individual level. And when we launched, we started to get phone calls and emails from these families telling us about how living with a solid form of remains totally shifted their relationship with those remains. And one man in particular invited us to create a video story about him. And so this is a 3-minute video about a man named Garth and his experience with solidified remains.
My mother is what is known as a phobic personality, which means that she sees everything in the negative. I looked at this at an early age and thought, no way, and really set up my own life. I just knew that my mother's point of view was not the way to go. My mother was very difficult to love. She was a hermit. We didn't have any adult enter our home who was not actually a close family member until I was 17. So I grew up in this, I suppose, lonely home, but my father, who was a gentle, beautiful man, allowing her to take that role in our household. I've had my mother's ashes for a little over a decade and my father's ashes for 2 decades. I found the ashes a little creepy, probably more because of the bone fragments than anything else. They didn't make me feel warm or sentimental. I think it's somehow the ashes just had no meaning in my life, even though it was my parents. Getting these has been sort of transformative in a way. I use them as a worry bead. Your thumb runs over the smooth surface, and there definitely is something relaxing about this. Somehow the idea of your parents turning into rock is a transfer from human life into nature, which is sort of exciting. You also realize that this is apparent. So I have 2 different reactions. My father's stone is just a feeling of joy, this lovely man. With my mother, it's bringing sort of a sense of truce, maybe, something of compassion, which I could never summon up during her life. And somehow the war between us is beginning to disappear. I mean, this is really pretty powerful. I never expected that to happen.
And so what we started to see with these families is that they were interacting with this form of remains in a completely different way. They were no longer putting them in closets. They were sharing them with everyone who was close to the decedent. They were no longer fearing them about spilling them. They were handling them. They were burying them. And it created a really elegant scattering ritual. And we've now had 3 families actually tell us that they take the solidified remains to therapy with them, which is something they were never doing with the cremated remains. And we really find that this has been such a powerful healing tool and ritual tool and celebration tool and memory tool for the families that we've been working with. And so I'll tell you a little bit about how it works. We work with funeral homes to get the remains shipped from from your location to our lab here in Santa Fe, New Mexico. We take the granule remains and we mill them into a very fine powder, and we remove any kind of little staples or anything. We use 100% of the remains in our process. We then add the remains to water along with a small amount of glass, and this acts as a binder. And we then take those solids that are formed from that kind of clay-like, we add the remains to the water, we form a clay-like material to form the solids. They're then put in a kiln and heated hotter than the temperature of cremation. This is where the hardness and the permanence comes from. We then polish those stones and clean them and return them to you to return to the family. One of the most interesting things that we've discovered while developing this technology is that while all cremated remains are more or less the same color and texture, all solidified remains are different. And so about 50% of the time they come out white, just beautiful and white. 45% of the time they come out a hue of blue or green. 5% of the time they come out these radical variations, and we don't know why it happens. But it's turned this ritual, it's been a really valuable part of solidified remains and our story, because it's turned this action of receiving remains into something that families are really excited about. And it's turned this sensation into something that feels like opening a present. Because I've heard so many times a family say, this is great, a form of remains we can touch and hold. And somebody says, and I wonder what color mom's gonna be. And that experience of watching a family be excited to open the box of remains is fascinating. And so as you can imagine, one of our biggest challenges over the last year is how to talk to families about this, right? Because this isn't a product, this isn't an add-on, this is a new form of remains. And so this option is offered in the arrangement. And we sell displays, and with the displays, we send a jar of cremated remains and a box of solidified remains. And you offer it in the arrangement, and you say, we have 2 forms of remains to choose from, cremated remains or solidified remains, and that family chooses which they would like to receive. And a lot of our funeral homes that we work with tell us this is the easiest sell they ever make, because this isn't a hard sell. This is kind of funny, but the best way we've found to sell this is by describing the traits of the 2 forms of remains that they now offer. Cremated remains are gray in color and granular in form. The average adult returns 8 to 10 cups of what's commonly known as ash. Families choosing permanent placement typically choose cremated remains. Solidified remains are stone-like, usually white in color. The average adult returns 25 to 35 solids, which look like stone. Families choosing to take remains home typically choose solidified remains. This is the entire sell that our successful retailers are giving to their families. And for a lot of them at this point, not offering solidified remains to a cremation family is like not offering embalming to a burial family. It's an easy way to add to the bottom line while also providing an incredibly meaningful experience for those families. And we work with funeral homes on a wholesale basis. We'll wholesale our service for $395. It retails for $595. So each sale is a $200 margin for those funeral homes. And we find that a lot of families who don't know what to do with them and are typically choosing the temporary cremation container, those are the families that are choosing this option. The best way out of all of our funeral homes, the best way we've found to communicate this to families is by adding it to the authorization. This is an example of how French funerals did it. They added a type of remains requested section. And so now a family has to check whether they want cremated remains or solidified remains. We think that, and it is our goal, that this is going to become a standard in the industry over the next decade. So this is the final form that a family receives when they receive the solidified remains back. Really beautiful, really natural feeling. It's in a wooden box in a cloth bag. The decedent's name is handwritten on the cloth bag. They get a solidification certificate, which is also handwritten. And just trying to provide a really comfortable experience and just completely change the experience that they're used to having. And so I'm going to end my presentation with a letter that we received from one of the funeral homes, which can't read, so I'm going to move some stuff out of the way. that we received from one of the families that work directly with a funeral home. And it's kind of, yeah, I'm just going to share this with you. This is from a woman named Chris. She said, we were given the choice of either ashes or parting stones at Regency Mortuary in Sun City, Arizona, when our oldest son died tragically over last Thanksgiving weekend. Saving someone's ashes was something I never thought I would do, but the stones are different. We carried some of them to a stream behind his home in Valdez, Alaska, and I'm sure you can still see them in the bottom of the stream with a salmon spawn. Next month, his father will hike up Humphreys Peak in Flagstaff and leave many of the stones in a place where he'd love to hike and camp. I have also given a bag to his brother and 2 small bags to his best friend, and I carry a very small bag in my purse. It is so very sad, but it keeps his memory close to me always. Thank you for giving us this small bit of comfort and the memories. This is a letter that we get almost weekly. We have about 40 handwritten letters that we've received from families over the last 8 months that we've been in business. And we would love to have every one of you on board offering this option. So I'm going to put a link to how to become a retailer in the chat. And I can also open up the webinar for questions. Rob, do you want to do questions now, or did you want to wait till the end?
No, I think if you have a question, let's go ahead and address that while we're here and let people have it while it's fresh on their mind. So is there anybody there that does have a question for Justin while he's with us?
I do.
Lisa does.
So Justin, in Washington, we can now do alkaline hydrolysis. Are you aware of what that is?
Yes, absolutely.
So can you also take the more flour talcum powder like remains and make those into stones?
So unfortunately it's not the same material, and so we've actually had to develop a different process to do that, and we are in process developing that. We've successfully solidified one batch of remains. We have a bunch of test material that we actually received from Bio something solutions, Sam Sieber. So the answer is no, but in the future, by next year, we are expecting to be able to offer that to all of our families.
Great.
And our most common question, turnaround time. So currently our turnaround time is 5 to 6 weeks. We are currently experiencing a massive influx in orders. We've almost doubled orders from 2 months ago. And so we're expecting that time to get back to our normal, which is 3 weeks. When you check out on our website, you can select your estimated ship date, and it will return for you an estimated delivery date, which is always accurate to our operation here. And then one of our most common questions is, will these dissolve in water? The answer is no, they will not dissolve in water. They are very much like real stones, or like ceramic kind of material. And actually Rob, in his little fish tank behind him, has one of the stones in with his fish tank.
Yeah, it's hard to see it from here, but it's definitely in there.
So I put a link in the chat. If you're interested in learning more about offering this, you can fill that out, and you'll schedule a call with me or one of my colleagues. We'd love to have you on board. And yeah, so thank you so much for inviting me to talk at this meeting. I'm really excited to spread the word about solidified remains.
All right, thank you, Justin. Yeah, it's a great product. Actually, Justin sent me a few samples of them. This is just one. I don't know if you can see it or not. It feels, the weight, the texture, everything, just like a regular riverbed stone that you would go out in your garden and pick up. Now, this is from an animal, which was another thing. You can do animal cremated remains as well.
Yep.
Okay.
And we'll often get an at-need family at a funeral home find out about this option for receiving remains, and then have other remains that are in their life also solidified. Yeah,
it's really a neat product. Like I say, I have them here on my desk just because he sent them to me, and I take them out and feel them and touch them and play with them, quite regularly. Actually, they're kind of those worry stones. You can sit there and do that with them, so it's kind of neat. So thank you, Justin, for joining us.
Thanks so much, Rob.
And if anybody is interested, either get in touch with Justin or get in touch with us, and we'll get you in touch with them.